Phil Jordan. I'm still in Belfast. I'm still alive. Nothing happened. I write the Belfast crime series, so we have Code of Silence and a few other shorter books. They follow Detective Inspector Veronica Taylor and her team around Belfast as they pursue organised crime and crime in general. And then I've also written the Task Force Trident novels, which follow Captain Tom Shepherd across one mission in Syria, and then in Double Cross, he leapfrogs around Europe, tracking down bad people who've done bad things. So that's, I've been writing for a year, coming on a year. The first book came out roughly a year ago, independently published, so it's just me behind it, covers everything else. So it's been good. I've enjoyed it. I've had lots of good positive feedback. People have been very kind, and UK Crime Book Club, amongst others, have been very generous in helping me spread the word.
We've already got Laura said she's read all of your Belfast crime books and loved them.
Laura,
we're saying that it's an excellent series.
I'm incredibly grateful to both. They've both been very supportive. Laura, especially in the early days, Behind Closed Doors come out, not in the greatest fashion. A few silly mistakes on my side as a first timer, dropped the wrong file, which was savaged in some cases, but Laura was able to see past the worst of it and gave a very sort of constructive and positive review. So I've been very grateful for Laura's feedback.
So you saying you did the covers yourself, because they are really good covers.
Yeah, I did all the covers myself. I loved it. I suppose reading was always my thing, but I really liked art in school. But I didn't really do very well in my art GCSE, so it was one of them. I liked to do it, but obviously I wasn't very good at it. But yeah, I think for me the writing's one thing, but then the covers and that sort of other bit of the creative designs, sort of an add-on and a bit of something to take if you hit a block in the writing, or you've been writing all day, or you've been marketing and you've been trying to do other things. It's a wee bit of a segue still within what you're doing, but it's I enjoy doing them.
I think they give a good impression of the place as well that you've set.
Yeah, I think I looked long and hard at what was certainly the Code of Silence covers, and that sort of group of books that I have in my head will probably all have that sense of place. Code of Silence has the Oval Tower and the waterfront. That's just that sort of scene, which I kind of looked at Ian Rankin's books and his covers and things, maybe the earlier ones, and they were a wee bit abstract. They weren't what they are. The general consensus is now of the girl in the yellow coat, or the shadowy man. I wanted to kind of stay away from that and just give a sense of something. Whereas the other books, the crime case files, as I call them, they do have the sort of the figures on the front, but they're sort of kind of a wee bit not as in your face, or not as generic, maybe is probably the word. Maybe that's because I've been doing them myself and not relying on anyone. But I looked at what was about, and I looked at the kind of what the genre suggested should a cover be, and kind of winged it to a certain extent. So again, the covers have been pretty well received too.
Good. Sam has said that you are very popular in the group, which is true. It must be good to have such support when starting out.
It's incredibly kind, and yes, I'm very, very grateful. As I say, the first Behind Closed Doors come out, and the first few reviews weren't the greatest. And obviously, this was something that had been building in me for many, many, many years. I suppose it was just you have that compulsion. I've always had that compulsion that I wanted to write. I've always loved to read. I've always loved books, and I've always had it in the back of my mind. Would love to do it, and then it could have been so easy to be just to be dismayed and see that this first crack was just not really cutting it, and was I kidding myself, and things like that. And that's when Laura's review came in and sort of said, no, look, yeah, there's issues, but beyond the issues, it's grand. And yeah, it's good. It's really, it's kind of, it's heartwarming, and it's great to see people responding, and it's great to have that feedback and know that, you know, people are reading and do support what you're doing, especially when sometimes you do feel a bit like, especially when you've big authors and you've big names and you've some excellent writers in the group, and you do have that sort of, especially starting off, I guess everybody's the same, that imposter syndrome where, am I kidding myself here? Am I just, but yeah, I'm very grateful for the support.
Well, Laura and Steve are two people both who have excellent taste.
Yes, they do.
They are recommending your books, and
Steve's reviews. I would have seen Steve's reviews before my books had ever made it in, and I always enjoyed Steve's reviews. Are great reviews. They're well considered and they're well thought out, and he's very well read. So whenever he's dropped a few reviews and got in touch and said he's enjoyed them, it's been, yeah, that was a big moment for me to say, well, you know, obviously they are striking a note somewhere.
Steve wants to know what made you decide to pick up your pen and write. What inspired you?
I guess as I've just known I've always wanted to do it. I think that's for as far back as I can go, maybe primary school, if we had a creative writing. You know, it wasn't, I liked school. School was grand, but it wasn't, you know, I wasn't an academic as such. But if it came to a creative writing task or anything like that, it was just something that I threw myself into. I can still remember stories, um, lying on my old bedroom floor back home, writing a book about a barbarian and like a fantasy type thing for something in school. So, and it sort of progressed, and it was always dabbling. I always had a pen, or I was always writing. I remember one Christmas, my sister got like a Fisher Price typewriter, and I think I was probably on the typewriter more than she was at some stages. But it brewed for 20, 30 years, probably. Me doing bits and casting it aside, and work got in the way. And I was quite active in triathlon, so that took a lot of time away from anything else. You worked and you trained and you competed, and that was life for a long time. But I guess COVID, we were just home from New York and COVID struck, and I found myself furloughed from work. So I had nothing to do, and I was getting paid for sitting at home. And I thought, well, not if there's any time, because I've always said, you know, if I won the lottery or if something happened, I would sit down and I would write. And this just seemed to be the ideal opportunity in the worst of times, that I was granted the free time and the ability to actually follow through on what I had been wanting to do. And managed over that 6 months or however long it was to finish Code of Silence, or certainly shape it into what it became. And then no one I'd sat a few book courses, the self-publishing formula. Mark Dawson, Mark Dawson's a big independent author, had run a few separate things where he would take people on a self-publishing journey and show them what they should be doing, and this, that, and the other. So I knew with Code of Silence coming out, one book was a task probably to sell to an audience cold, especially, you know, somebody coming out of the starting blocks who've never known people. Certainly I was one of those people that just, I've my walk into the bookshop, I go to C, B, or, you know, R for ranking and lift, and if it's a new book, I'm away. So I'd written Code of Silence, and in the months after, while that was getting knocked together and edited and tidied up, I'd put together Behind Closed Doors and Agent in Place. And I had come to the idea, the two main characters in Code of Silence, Veronica Taylor and Tom Shepard, sort of give them a bit of a backstory and a bit of a different way into that, so that if eventually when release and stuff came, people had other things to read, and those characters could go on a bit of a separate journey away from the main through line of the book. So yeah, it was literally furlough, and all of a sudden I had time to do it, and that was the blessing of me getting the chance to finally follow through on what I'd been thinking about for all those years.
I'm sure a lot of people are glad that you did. Laura said it gives her a taste of back home, especially post ceasefires. The troubles have put people off setting things there. There does seem to be quite a strong kind of like Belfast noir kind of.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly taken a boom again, and I think for me, I suppose for me, it was always the Scottish and the Scandi stuff that would have been big. The Rankins and the Denzel Merricks and the Val McDermods, and then the likes of the Millennium Trilogy and those sort of, his name escapes me now, but Kenneth Branagh played him in the TV show. That's the one. So they would have been that sort of thing. But now, you've got the likes of James Murphy and Sharon Dempsey, and you've always had Colin Bateman, who's always been the granddaddy of sort of crime noir back here at home. But it's definitely taken off. I think there was a Troubles book that always had, they were set back and then, and there was the issues there were back then. But I think for me, I wanted to write about home. I was going to write. It was fair play to anybody that, Lee Child went and wrote about America and was hugely successful. But I had to write about home, and I think Troubles, ceasefires, everything else. Northern Ireland's really complex, and it's still really complex, and everything that happens now still has this shadow hanging over it. Albeit it's a vastly different place than what it was when I was growing up, but everything still, history sort of has a part to play still, even though we're moving forward, and it just makes it that little bit more interesting as a setting. I think it sort of comes to life a bit more. Certainly for me writing, hopefully for people reading. It's good to hear Laura isn't the first person to say that they've enjoyed it because it's set back home, and I've had people contact me and say that they enjoy reading the books and following the characters around Google Maps and seeing the towns and the city and stuff like that. And there's a lot to see and a lot to do, and a lot, as I say, there's an old and a new trying to work together still here, which makes it sort of interesting. And
it's good that there are more writers putting it out there on the map as well.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, it certainly Northern Ireland, Belfast in general, we've over the last few years, it has really boomed in the film industry, from Game of Thrones being set here, Line of Duty's filmed here. We had Bloodlands with James Nesbitt there the last year or two ago. And Marcella with Anna Friel was set here for one of the series. So yeah, the film board and stuff, Northern Ireland Film and things like that, have really brought Northern Ireland on the map in the sort of in the television world, and certainly there's an awful lot of us giving it a good shove on the book front.
Steve has asked you about your triathlons.
Yeah.
About that, he said he used to do biathlons himself.
Yeah, I guess it was one of them ones that I fell into bored. I was doing a bit of swimming and I was doing some running, and I had very little left to do with my day, so I decided to put them all together and ended up doing triathlon. And it was a fairly long period of my 20s, early 30s, and got to compete across the UK and Ireland, competed in, I had an age group European Championship that I competed in, and I was lucky enough, just Belfast hosted the World Police and Fire Games, which was like a Commonwealth Games of it was an Olympic Games, the world of the police and fire service. And just because it was set in Belfast, I was able to compete in that World Police and Fire Games triathlon. So it was good. I think it taught me a lot too. Training had to be structured. You had to have sort of set aside time, and you had to be committed and dedicated to the training and what you were doing. So I think that ultimately helped in the long run with the writing.
Fair enough. Sam has asked what other resources aside from the courses you found useful. She thinks it was you that recommended Save the Cat Writes a Novel.
It could have been. I struggled. So for years, I wanted to write, and I wrote, and I wrote myself into corners, and I just couldn't really. I guess I didn't know at that point that there was a nuts and bolts to writing a book. I didn't know there was a path and things that you needed. The beats really is how it was described. I eventually found it as how it was described to me. So the likes of Save the Cat, it was a screenwriting book by a guy called David P. Calvisi, I think it was, who broke down a lot of different films into their parts. So, you know, minute 5, this happens, the hero's introduced, or hero's introduced, minute 5, something happens, minute 15. And I was able to kind of see how he done that through David Fincher films or Chris Nolan films. And it kind of just clicked that, right, okay, so my book needs to kind of follow these structured points. And then Save the Cat was another one. So it was really the screenwriting books that gave me the skeleton, or the backbone, I suppose, of what it was that you needed to do when you were writing. A story's a story, and that's grand, but you have to hit those points in the story, the highs and the lows, and those dark moments, and the turn into the finale and things like that. So it was really the screenwriting books helped me. Certainly the Calvisi book, Larry Bond, I think, was the other guy that wrote a book about plot structure. And the SPF podcast, which was really helpful. It's just a lot of information about self-publishing, about, they would cover every topic from, how you market your books to in some cases how you structure and how you do the writing side of things. So it's a free resource. I watched a load of videos. I listened to a lot of interviews with authors about their sort of thing, how they started, what they did, and then read a ton of books with a spreadsheet open and just plotted their books, chapter by chapter, and where it sat, and was able to kind of mirror and get it into my head how these things go together, because that's what I was struggled with. I wrote and wrote. I must have wrote thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of words, but I wish I had half of them that have been binned in the history.
How do you find doing the marketing aspect?
It's the time thing, I suppose. I don't mind. I haven't done so much. I would do a lot of book swaps at the minute. So I would do group promotions on a site called Book Funnel that distributes my book. So a lot of authors band together, email out a free book, and people get the chance to read it, and that picks up. Amazon, I don't mind doing the ads. I like creating the adverts that you probably see flying up on the group every now and again when I have them, because I like, same as designing the covers, designing an ad and doing all that's interesting enough for me. Amazon ads, so advertising on Amazon and Facebook is just a different beast altogether. Facebook's okay. Create an advert, set up your account, create your advert, and it kind of goes out. Amazon's just a weird animal that you just haven't figured it out yet. You can spend and see no traction. So yeah, I don't mind marketing the likes of this. I like to do interviews. I like, I've sent out the odd, I've had the odd press thing back home in newspapers. I've had a few TV things. So from that point of view, I enjoy it. But it is another sort of full-time aspect. So working full-time, trying to write full-time, and then market full-time. I guess the benefit is it's all on me. I have the final say on it. So yeah, it's okay.
It's a lot to fit in, isn't it? I would imagine.
It's huge. Yeah, it definitely is. I think sometimes is it worthwhile going and trying to get a publisher and all the rest? But I think the days of the huge publishing deals and everything else are long behind us now. And I must admit, it is a lot, but I enjoy it. It gives me something to do.
You've been asked what your day job is.
I was in the security industry for 20 odd years and then moved into telecom. So I'm a project manager now for a telecoms firm. So yeah, I sort of organize a lot of surveying and day-to-day work, construction type works for a team of engineers and stuff. So yeah, it's a busy enough day job. So yeah, project manager for telecoms / writer.
Steve has said it's interesting that you chose screenwriting books because he thinks your books have a strong visual quality.
I think I've always seen, whenever I'm writing, or I would have a very, suppose, strong visual image of what, of the story and how the scenes play out. So I guess it probably is why screenwriting helped me. And I've always loved film, and from no age, film and TV was the other great love. If I didn't have my head stuck in a book from, when you were told, right, TV's done for the day, it was head in a book. And any other time it would have been watching, the likes of those serials that were about whenever I was young, the likes of, you'd have caught, they were older than me, but they were still on, the likes of Flash Gordon, or, those kind of Saturday morning serials and then movies and stuff.
Steve, what's your favourite film? Mine's Jurassic Park. I don't think that's surprising. It's okay, you're back. Yay.
The Gremlins.
I can stop waffling on at people and they'll get thingy. Tell us what your favourite film is. That's what you asked before you disappeared.
Oh, that's maybe why it's too difficult one. But it's like, what's your favorite child? I guess I love the likes of Michael Mann's Heat or Seven, David Fincher. Weirdly, I really enjoyed Miami Vice with Colin Farrell. I thought it was kind of it was one of them ones that was well plotted out for me. And Hot Fuzz, surprisingly, Hot Fuzz, the comedy police one. Again, from a point of view of how it was Edgar Wright put the story together. You could see the act 1, 2, and 3, and the different bits, the stuff that is now ruined for me because I read all those screenwriting books and know what's going to happen at what minute and what movie. So yeah, the likes of those. Growing up, it was stuff like Die Hard and things like that. But yeah, Heat was great. Shawshank, the classic sort of ones, those big ones. Star Wars, when I was growing up, when I was very young, it was this sort of Star Wars movies would have been, and Indiana Jones, that sort of stuff. But yeah, as I got older, it would be anything. Again, I would read anything, I would watch anything, but it would be the likes of certainly Heat, and that sort of thing.
So I realise I'm going to look quite shocking because I'm drinking from a Star Wars mug.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I cannot stand the Star Wars films.
No, guess it was just maybe it was just growing up was the one that I first went to or was first taken to, and just developed the love of them at that age, or maybe it was just really good marketing by Lucasfilm. It was all when I was growing up, it was all the toys and that was the thing.
I think you have to get the love when you're young, and I didn't watch them until I was an adult, and I just they don't work for me. I've seen all of them because I've got a really nerdy husband.
He likes them.
He is excessively nerdy.
Oh, well.
So I have to go and see all of them, but I hate them.
Well, that makes you a good wife, then, if you're going to see them and you hate them.
We have a deal. If I go and see a film that I really hate that he likes, he has to go and see one of my choice back.
A good deal.
Yeah, it works well. And depending on how awful it is, I will take it really awful in return.
You'll go out of your way.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. I got excessive revenge when he made me go and see Lord of the Rings.
Ah, another good.
Terrible.
Again, another good set of movies for me.
I've only seen one. You got lots of love for Hot Fuzz.
Yeah, it's a good show.
So who is introduces to like your two main characters a little bit more for anyone who's watching who's not Reggie yet.
Okay, so the books, the crime side of the books follows Detective Inspector Veronica Taylor. She's a detective inspector with the PSNI. Her father was a policeman who lost his life during the Troubles, and she lost her mother not long after. She followed her father into the service, and her father's partner from his time as a constable is now her detective sergeant, Doc McPherson. So Veronica and McPherson are teamed up with a few other detectives, and they just explore and chase investigate the crime. So I guess Code of Silence was a bit more of an aggressive book in that it follows organized crime and trafficking and over the course of Code of Silence, as it spoke about a little bit before, that shadow of the past kind of comes into it, and they find themselves not only dealing with a crime that's occurred right there and then, but this stuff from the past that's still sort of invasive in sort of society. And Taylor's big nemesis is an organized criminal. He was a gangster come good, made his money. Gordon Munster Beatty. She came up against him as in her early days, and their careers have kind of mirrored in trajectory as she's rose through the ranks of the police. He's rose through the ranks, and her big aim is to bring Beatty down. He's Teflon. He's untouchable. He's been caught a few times and walked away. So that's her sort of main aim. The other sort of character that's in Code of Silence is Tom Shepard, and he's an ex-military, ex-special forces soldier, who lost his wife and child in an accident, which he subsequently finds out wasn't an accident at all. It was, they were in the wrong place at the wrong time, and he's sort of back home after many years away for a bit of revenge on the people he's found out, and that puts him and Beatty and Taylor in a sort of collision course. Him for payback, and her to bring Beatty to justice. So the other books, the Task Force Trident books, they follow Tom on his way before Code of Silence when he was still in the military. So they're more of a book in the sort of vein of Tom Clancy or Vince Flynn, that sort of military type book, which was great fun to write. Again, those would have been the likes of Black Hawk Down and things like that, those military style movies, Platoon and things I would have enjoyed. So even those TV shows, so that it was good to get a difference, get away. Belfast was great, and I loved to write about it, but this was something that I could write, and a character that I still had a grip on, but I could explore so much more from a totally different point of view.
What was it like? Because you said one was set in Syria.
Yeah.
How was the research sort of setting up a book?
Yeah, I mean, I was at a chat in a library with a couple of authors there a couple of weeks ago, and that sort of same question came up. But, well, in general about research and about what you read in a book and how much. So the book is what you see in the book is the tip of a huge iceberg. You research loads of stuff for hours and maybe throw in 2 sentences. So for me, for the Syria book, there was a lot of Syria interested me because it did and it didn't mirror here. You know, it was different factions and a bit of a civil war and that sort of thing, but it was on a total war scale where we, thank goodness, never got to that stage. So the whole place interested me from that point of view. And then the research was just really into the place and the factions and the environment of it and what it was like. So that was loads of first person accounts from the ground. It was watching loads of news reports and documentaries and a lot of first hand accounts from soldiers and medics and things like that sort of built up a picture for me. And then I had the narrative in my head, the sort of what was happening and what was going to happen. And it was just really getting those kind of details nailed in a bit. But it was just a lot of research. Like, I guess anybody that writes historical fiction, you've just tons and tons to read and write and watch to get a grip on it.
Do you have like a favorite thing you found then when you've gone off on your research, like favorite kind of rabbit hole you've been down?
I don't know. You can't just get lost in Google Maps now. You know, traveling. That's one. I was in, I can't remember what city it was. Maybe it was Rome or Venice or something in one of the books, and I was just, hours of just walking around, going, I really must jump into go and visit. Never mind Google Mapping this, but in the thriller books, it's a lot of the stuff, I suppose, is the hardware and the helicopters and the bits and bobs like that you're sort of researching. You just keep looking through that. The Belfast crime stuff is more, I suppose, a bit of procedural things. You know, you just end up on like a police procedural books and criminal scene of crime things. So you almost feel like you're researching for an exam rather than writing a book. You know, you cram all this stuff in, but rabbit holes, not particularly. Not. Let's try and stay focused as much as I can. I know I have seen people that are just, have mentioned how they're researching poisons or certain things, and they're just there for hours and hours and hours finding out which plants, and you end up going, I didn't realize that, and following. But no, I have never, not particularly, nothing that it's dragged me away for a long time.
Donna agrees with me about Star Wars, which is excellent.
Well, each to their own.
Well done, Donna. And I'm been demoted from Sam's favourite nerd. It's now my husband, apparently.
Oh, well.
He's got to be someone's favourite nerd.
That's it. You win some, you lose some.
Are your books out on audio?
No, they're not. And that's simply because I'm independently published. So the cost of audio production at the minute is just far beyond what I could come up with. Hopefully, if they continue to do well and that sort of revenue picks up and it gathers up a bit, and there's a bit of a fund there that can see beyond the next editing process or the next sort of expense for covered pictures and things like that, then yeah, certainly I'd love to get them on audio. But it's just cost prohibitive for me at the moment. You know, because you're into the thousands of pounds for getting a proper voice actor and all the rest of it and the production and stuff. So it's just, unfortunately, at this point, beyond, which I know is restrictive on some people, but unfortunately, that's where I am at this precise moment in the old career.
Laura said you can do a budget with Alexa in the meantime. Alexa will read, or you can get, I think you can get Kindles to read.
Yeah, I think you can.
Doing an accent, but they will read it.
Yeah, I think you can. And I know there's a few things I've been reading about AI at the moment, that you can get AIs becoming so far advanced that they'll, you can choose your voice and you can choose whatever, and that's put your manuscript in and it'll read it as whoever you want. So similar to these sort of the deep fake videos, I guess you see, of Tom Cruise doing weird stuff. But get someone to read your book. So we'll see how that goes. But as I say, just a wee bit cost prohibitive, and hopefully in the not too distant future.
Donna said she'd listen to you read them.
That's very kind. I couldn't listen to myself. I hate hearing. It's weird hearing your own accent.
Yeah, because you never sound how you think you sound.
No, it's odd.
Yeah, Laura says you get some people complaining about the actor not having an authentic Belfast accent.
Yeah, that's the other thing. I'd seen some. I can't remember who it was, but it might have been some Scottish book, some book set in Scotland, but they didn't have a Scottish narrator. And I'd seen a thing about it. It threw somebody right out, and I guess that's true. I would prefer if I could get someone from here to read the books. A good actor from here to read them. Again, I would be torn whether it would be a female, because the book runs between Taylor and Beattie and Tom Shepherd, whether it would be a female narrator or male. One of the great narrators for me is the guy that reads the Ian Rankin books, James McPherson. I think those audiobooks are incredible. His voice acting in those books is brilliant.
I don't have the attention span for an audiobook.
I wouldn't have done, only obviously with work I was doing a lot of traveling pre-COVID, so I would have been driving from one end of the country to the other, or I would have been traveling to projects in London and stuff. So I would have been on the plane, or I would have been in the car. So that's where I ended up getting into the audiobooks, and that was one of the series that just devoured because they were so well done.
What are you working on at the moment?
So at the moment, I'm working on the follow-up to Code of Silence, which is called The Crossed Keys. And it's almost a direct follow-on in that it's set not very long after the finish of Code of Silence. So it picks up some of the threads that were still loose, things that Taylor discovered at the end, that some of the big actions that were left from the past, or things that had been discovered in the course of the novel. But it's also investigating a totally new crime. But I suppose Code of Silence was I don't want to use the word the origin novel, but it sort of set up the big picture of the Belfast and this sort of Belfast that I've written. So Cross Keys expands on that. I was a big fan of The Wire, the TV show, and I liked the way every season of The Wire picked a different. So it was the projects in the first one, and then it was the docs in the second season, and then it went on to politics and the police and bits and stuff. So I kind of have that. So much has happened here, and there's so many different aspects to here. So Cross Keys follows on with a new crime, looking at without giving anything away at this point, a new crime with ties again to the past, and that also links back to the threads of the previous book, that weren't quite resolved, or the characters that didn't, the ones that got away, they're still sort of active. So we're following what happens, albeit it's not you'll not have to read it in the first one to get it. But yeah, the Cross Keys, that's what I'm working on at the minute. Hopefully September time. And then I have a few drafts, maybe another Halloweeny type book, and certainly I'd like to get a Christmas one. The idea was I would do, in my head, I would do one full length book and two of the shorter crime case files a year. I'm a bit behind on that at the minute, just with regular work. But if I could get one full-length book and 2 novellas out a year, that would be great. Just as something, the novellas really to tide by, until give me something to keep interest in and keep the interest there for people that wanted to read.
Yeah, I quite like novellas in between.
Yeah, they're just, I guess they're more of I looked at the Code of Silence and probably the Crossed Keys and those books that I have in my head coming up as, I guess, the box set, if you will. It was the series book. You would read it and it would sort of be a fully formed thing. Whereas the case files were the one-offs, a one-off special, that one that came out in the summer or Christmas. And that's why they're shorter books. They're maybe 150 or the guts of a couple of 100 pages, but they're a solely a closed story with those characters. Now that there's a wee bit of carryover and talk between reference to different things, but they're all pretty much standalone. And that was just again, as a new writer, to get the output up, it was easier to get those shorter tales put together than try and, amongst everything else, build a big catalogue of 300, 400 page books.
So, what events and things have you got coming up? You said you've been out to some library talks and...
I had a couple of months ago. I had a TV. There's NVTV, Northern Visions TV. They did a piece. I went and visited their studios, and they recorded a piece. There's probably a link to it on my page somewhere. And then a few weeks ago, it was the crime writing month for the Crime Writers Association, I did a panel with James Murphy and Linda Hagan and Kerry Buchanan in Carrickfergus Library, which was, again, that was the first sort of public first event. But coming up, I have nothing planned beyond this, although I'll still be reaching out to people and seeing is there anything happening. If anybody comes to me and wants me to do something, then certainly. I seen you were maybe when you were off for a few days there considering something next May time for the UK Crime Book Club. So I've certainly...
Is something next May time for the UK Crime Book Club?
I would certainly pencil that in for a visit at this stage.
We've got a venue and everything.
Happy days. So yeah, it would be good to get across. I haven't been across to the UK in a while. I spent a lot of time back and forward in Scotland for a while, but I haven't been across in a long time. And certainly I'm not scheduled to go to any of the events, Bloody Scotland or any of those sorts of things. So it would be good next year to maybe see how the land lies and get to a few.
Yeah, hopefully more people, hopefully it'll be easier to get through airports and things.
Yeah, I know, that's a bit of a grim at the minute.
I've not tried.
No, I'm not long back from through an airport. I was away for a week or so there on holiday, but touch wood, all went well. We had no bother, but you see the horror stories. They're not the greatest places to be stuck for hours and hours.
No, well, the furthest I've travelled is Birmingham.
Well,
recently, so.
I've no plans at the minute. But yeah, we'll just keep writing and keep moving this story forward and hopefully getting it into people's hands later on this year.
I've also got to ask you the favourite question of, have you ever acted out a scene?
I probably have. I've probably acted out with the two dogs sitting and looking at me going, what are you doing? But yeah, definitely I would read dialogue and things like that. I would be a sketcher. So if I was trying to work out where people were and what they were doing and the sort of room or the car chase or the environment, then yeah, I would sketch that out. But um, if that's acting out scenes, then yeah, I would do dialogues and things like that just to read them out loud. But I haven't thrown myself about the room acting out anything serious.
Good. And what have you read this year that you've really enjoyed?
Oh, do you know, I did an interview with yourself and Alex Scarrow and Chris Speck a while ago
Mm-hmm.
and read, my mind's went blank, the boat one, Chris,
North Sea
sorry,
Tale?
the North Sea Tale. Loved it, thought it was a great locked room type mystery. Um, I've recently there the other day finished a book that was set here at home by Sharon Dempsey, who took Eden Mulligan, which I really enjoyed. And other than that, I haven't done a lot of reading this year. I read one of Tony Forder's books, the Chase one, which again I'm terrible remembering names. The Huntsman, which I enjoyed. It was good. Tony, I stumbled upon Tony's books in the group, and I've read a few of them, and they're great. He's a great writer. But I haven't, because I've been working and because I've been trying to get my own stuff done. I haven't really read as much as I would like to read, but they would have been ones that are sticking in my head at the moment. I'm looking forward to Ian Rankin's new one. I think it sounds quite good. Rebus is in trouble and on trial for something, so I always would read those. But yeah, I'm trying to read more authors that are in the group to sort of see, and I like to read first books, so just to see how people, for their first book, and how, I guess because I'm still so early in this, how they approach things and how they put things together. So I'm a bit certainly trying to read more people in the book in the group.
Excellent. Well, we love that when we hear about it.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's a real good group, and it's a real good group of people that love to read, and a real fantastic group for authors, especially authors that are maybe not the superstar, name and lights, the big ticket authors, but authors that are heavyweight, really good at what they do. And it's good. I've really enjoyed being part and contributing where I can.
I think the group really appreciates you contributing.
Well, I'm glad.
As well. And thank you for joining us tonight. I'm sorry that we lost you a couple of times.
No, sorry, I don't know what's going on. I would assume it's potentially someone else in this house streaming Love Island or something else, and it's eating my internet. But yeah, thanks. I really appreciate it. It was good to chat, and it was great to get such lovely feedback from everyone. It's really appreciated.
Some real fans.